Welcome to Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where you get unconventional insights into retirement and lifestyle design that actually work. You don't have to settle for the same tired Wall Street advice. Break away from the herd and learn how to achieve the retirement lifestyle of your dreams. And now, here's your host, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
All right, back on Personal Pension Radio. Love to be here. Episode number 109. 109. I'm not sure why I said that with such an emphatic tone in my voice, but it's just something about 109 just sounded pretty cool. So, you are at Personal Pension Radio. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Kraig Strom. That's Kraig with a K, K-R-A-I-G, Strom. I am the income engineer broadcasting from my own personal pension radio workshop here in Southern California. And some of you have asked about the workshop, have asked about what the workshop looks like. I am going to post on my personal YouTube channel. I am going to post a video of my workshop. It does actually have my podcast set up. I hope nobody is expecting to see some, very cool, Miami Vice or chic, Hollywood recording setup, because I keep things as simple as I can, as efficient as I can, and my workshop and the studio setup is exactly like that. It is just as basic as can be, but if you would like a peek behind the curtain, and for those of you who have asked for it, I have actually recorded a video that has a full walk around of my studio workshop. It really is my wood shop. And I have a corner of my workshop actually set up for my podcast. So you can find that when you search on Google for Kraig with a K, Strom, Kraig Strom. I have a YouTube channel where I post a variety of different things, and I'll have that up here soon. Now, what is Personal Pension Radio all about? It's all about my quest to get the message for retirement income out there, into the world. It's so critically important. I had something happen recently. I was actually at an event. It was a social event last week, and I had CPAs and lawyers and just top-notch people around me. I just love to be surrounded by these high-quality, high-caliber people. And one of these folks was a CPA, very prominent, very well-known CPA, and he asked me what I did, and I said, I optimize retirement income so people don't have to sacrifice their lifestyle. He said, what do you mean optimize retirement income? I said, well, have you ever heard of the 4% rule or the Monte Carlo simulation, or have you ever heard of sequence risk and how damaging it can be to retirement? And he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. We were actually just standing there, having a friendly, he was having a cup of coffee and I'm having a pastry. We're just chatting. But the look on his face as I said, Monte Carlo simulation and 4% rule, et cetera, and the economics of retirement income, he was clueless. And we stood there for the next 10 or 15 minutes while I educated him on some of these economic principles related to retirement income that the financial advisory community in general never talks about. So that's what this show is all about. I want to bring the conversation of retirement income to the masses, to as many people as I possibly can. So I truly appreciate the reviews on iTunes. I appreciate you sharing this with your friends. I appreciate the questions and call-ins that I get with information for the show. Thank you so much. Now, what this show is not, it is not an attorney or a CPA giving you advice, because I am not an attorney. I am not a certified public accountant. I am a certified financial planner and a charter. Let me get my tongue on straight, because when I say that I am a certified financial planner, I am supposed to say, to be approved and regulation compliant, I am a certified financial planner professional. I'm also a chartered financial consultant, and I've got a bunch of different letters and numbers and certifications and all the wonderful things that go with it. Now, despite all of my wonderful credentials and my qualifications as a financial planning professional, please don't act on things that you hear on this show as if it was advice for you and your specific situation. Please don't do that. And especially, please do not act on things that you hear from financial entertainers. Financial entertainers on the radio, on podcasts, on TVs. These are people that are unlicensed, unregulated, and basically have no oversight, and in many cases have no business whatsoever giving you financial advice. Now, there are some podcasters, for example, and there are some people out there on the radio and TV that have serious credentials behind them that they've actually suspended some of their credentials and licensing so that they could be full-time podcasters and media broadcasters. Pay attention to the people that you're listening to, but no matter what, please don't act on things that you hear on a show, even on my show, without meeting with me, without having a conversation with me. And you might think, well, how am I going to meet with you, Kraig? I'm in Tennessee. Well, I work, thanks to the wonders of technology, I work with folks all over the country. GoToMeeting and web meetings and Skype. It's fantastic. There's no reason that you and I can't get in touch, have a conversation, review your specific situation. That's how you make a decision. Work with a qualified financial advisor. I would suggest a certified financial planner, someone who has gone that extra mile to really be the top of their game in the financial world. So let's jump in. First segment, watch your step. This is a big one, and you'll see by the title of this podcast, I actually don't title them all right away, but the title of this podcast is, Are You Making a Huge Retirement IRA Mistake? And so many people do make this mistake. And sadly, this is a story about a financial advisor making the mistake. So here's the story. IRA beneficiary mistakes. Okay, IRA beneficiary mistakes. Now, I'm going to start with the negative, and I'm going to give you the details, but I'm going to also give you some information. It's really a happy part of this, that I've been able to help with. So this client that I've worked with for a number of years, when I met her, she did not want my help with her investment. She thought her investment folks are just fine, and we're going to leave those investments with those same folks, and we're not going to move those investments. Okay. I gave her some tips and suggestions that she might want to speak with her investment advisor about, but they stayed there. She had a IRA account, wink, wink, hint, hint, and a non-IRA account, and those things stayed there. Okay. Now, it wasn't until I've visited with her over the years to make sure that, the stuff that we did together, and you might ask, well, what did you help her with, Kraig? Well, the only thing that I helped her with was a life insurance policy. This was a seasoned citizen, this wonderful lady in her late 70s. As we got to talking, she was very interested in legacy planning. She was really interested in the idea of leaving money behind. Now, this was partly because at the time that we started working together, she had been going through a very difficult time watching her youngest daughter pass away from cancer. It was a very, very difficult time. And after that happened, she was very sensitive about her own mortality and her own legacy that she might leave behind. And she truly wanted to put something in place to benefit her grandchildren who had just lost their mother, her own daughter. So the conversation that she started was legacy. There was no specific idea of life insurance because at the time I met her, the legacy was going to be the home she lives in and her IRA and her non-IRA investment account. That was it. That was her legacy. A pretty significant amount of money, but she just wasn't fully satisfied with it. She thought she could do more. She wanted to do more. Now that her grandkids had lost their mom, she absolutely wanted to do more. So in the conversations that ensued, I brought up the idea of life insurance planning. And as we went through it, the initial reaction was, I don't know about life insurance planning. I'm not really sure about that. And then I said, well, let's go through the details, see what you think, and let's just go from there. And she agreed. She wanted to learn, so I explained to her that a life insurance policy in her case, cash value, permanent type life insurance, could, for a minimum lowest possible amount of premium, the amount you pay for the policy, we could establish a policy that had a guaranteed death benefit, that as long as these particular premiums are paid for this particular number of years, blah, 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 that a death benefit would happen. Now, where do we get the premiums to pay the life insurance? Well, she had cash on hand, just basically sitting in the bank. For years, she'd had money sitting in CDs and things that weren't earning a great deal of interest, but costing her taxes on the interest, what little interest that she earned. So the plan was to systematically, not all at once, but systematically, over a quarterly basis. Now, that was the recommendation, a quarterly basis instead of lump sums once a year, because this was an older lady at 78 years old. I think she was 78 at the time. Gosh, I've lost track of time. Anyway, it was better to go quarterly instead of on an annual basis because, honestly, mortality was coming up quickly. She was on the other side of 75, so it made sense to just put it in slow and steady over a quarterly period of time. Now, where am I going with all this? Well, she passed away. She passed away this year, January 2017. And I had received the phone call from her daughter. Now, this is her oldest daughter, called me and said, Mom passed away. Now, it was very sad because this client is one of my favorites. She's she's quite the character. Well, she was quite the character. I still speak of her as first, if she's still here. Anyway, I got together with her daughter after the funeral and everything was all set. And we sat down to look at the actual outcome. Like, what happened? Well, for this period of time from 2009 to 2017, 8 years, she had paid into this life insurance policy, $10,000 per quarter. She'd paid in 32 payments for $320,000. $320,000 had paid in. Now, for the record, over this last 8 years, putting that life insurance in place had no consequence to her lifestyle. She had long-term care insurance planning already in place, which was necessary as she slipped into Alzheimer's and ultimately passed away. So this money that we had systematically transferred into this life insurance was $10,000 per quarter for 32 quarters, let's say $320,000. So what was the ultimate benefit that I now get to deliver to her daughter and her grandkids? Remember the grandkids. I get to deliver a check for $900,000. $900,000. And this is where I look back and I've listened to my friend Dave Ramsey on his show countless times say that any financial advisor, any financial planner that ever speaks of cash value life insurance is a terrible person, and you should run from them and just they're horrible financial people because there's no reason ever whatsoever that cash value life insurance is ever right. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, once again, out loud, Dave Ramsey is absolutely wrong. Any financial advisor that says that any particular product is just always wrong, well, they are wrong just for saying such a thing, because I don't personally believe that. Now, there's a number of financial products that I don't personally like, or at least I haven't figured out what they're good for, but I cannot ever say, well, there's no reason whatsoever that could ever be good for anyone. Well, Dave Ramsey says that anybody who sells cash value life insurance is a terrible, terrible person. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think the family, this daughter and these grandchildren think of me today, the person who is delivering to them this legacy dream that their grandmother and their mother had for them. What do you think those people think of me? They are grateful. That's the words that they are using, is grateful, amazed. They are crying when they think about the gift that is coming from grandma. It's amazing. Now, the technical side of me has to stop and say, well, let's make sure to answer Dave Ramsey's point. Dave Ramsey would say, well, you could have just put that $10,000 per quarter, and based on the average market returns of 12%, you would have had blah, 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 blah. Well, remember, Dave Ramsey quoting a 12% rate of return is absolute bull hooey. How's that for a nice Southern comfort word? Bull hooey. There is no such thing. Dave Ramsey, 12%. But what kind of a rate of return would my client have had to yield on her $10,000 per quarter for 32 quarters? Okay, $10,000 per quarter for 32 quarters to give her family $900,000. No big deal. The investment account would simply have to yield 22.6 plus percent. 22.64 actually, if you want to get as close as I could get. 22.64% yield on that annual rate of return to get $900,000 starting with a $10,000 deposit. No way in the world that's going to happen, right? No way in the world. Okay. Now, there's all kinds of arguments. Oh, well, we could have calculated X and we could have started from this amount or that amount. The point is, just looking at starting fresh, we're going to put a plan in place to make sure that there's a $900,000 legacy left behind. Guess what? The family also gets the money in the IRA, and they also get the money left in the non-taxable accounts. Instead of just the small amount that would have been left in the bank accounts earning paltry little 0.5% and 1% rates if they're lucky in the CD accounts, they get a $900,000. And are you ready for this? Just remember what I didn't calculate here. This is an income tax-free benefit. Income tax-free benefit, $900,000. Okay? So how does Dave Ramsey answer this kind of a question? Like, what could we have done better for a legacy for this wonderful lady who left a legacy for her grandchildren and her daughter? I say nothing. We couldn't have done anything better. This is fantastic, and he doesn't ever address these kinds of head-on conversations. I'd love to hear him address this head-on conversation to tell us how in the world we could have achieved this phenomenal, wonderful legacy for this beautiful woman who wanted to leave something for her, well, I'm going to get choked up, watching her youngest daughter die of cancer, and then in a short time that she had left in her life to figure out how she could leave an even larger, more impactful legacy behind. Nothing else could have done it. Nothing. Life insurance done right is the most amazing financial asset that I know. It's phenomenal. It is not the answer. Now, you've heard me say this before. It is not the answer to maximum retirement income. Okay? It's a great part of legacy planning, retirement income planning. It's a great part of it. And in this case, I am honored, absolutely honored, that I get to deliver a $900,000 check. And I'm going to hand that check over to her daughter and say, this is a gift from your mother. This is a gift to your grandchildren. This is a gift from mom. That is fantastic. So I'm excited about that. Now, I mentioned in the title there's an IRA mistake. Remember that this lady did not want me managing her investments. When I first met her, she didn't want to turn over any investments to me. She wanted to stay with the guy that she's been with at the big, well-known investment house. Okay. She had a fairly sizable IRA account. It's $120,000 when she died, even though she's had to be taking required distributions out of that account for a while now. It was $120,000 when she died. Now, when I got the call from her daughter that she had passed away, and then again the call that it was time for us to meet after the funeral. And I went to see her to complete the life insurance claims paperwork. I asked her about her other accounts. The daughter's tone of voice changed, like really changed, almost kind of an angry tone, but almost like a defeated tone. She said that her mom's IRA did not have a beneficiary listed on the account. The investment advisor said that the beneficiary had been mom's husband, but after he had passed away, mom had never added and updated the beneficiary. They actually then followed up by telling the daughter, essentially it was mom's fault. She never came in to get it done. We told her that she should, but she never came in to get it done. Well, first of all, the financial advisor should have taken care of this, should have driven out to the house, should have done something to make sure that beneficiary got changed. But the daughter then asked the financial advisor, well, what do we got to do? What do we have to do? Remember, this is a big name firm. And the answer was, well, sorry, you're going to have to open a probate. You're going to have to open a probate. What? A probate? Are you kidding me? I about fell out of my chair and her dining room table. A probate account, the mandatory statutory fees for opening a probate, you're going to need an attorney to do that. It's going to cost $8,000 on a $120,000 IRA. That was the answer from this big highfalutin investment house. Open probate? Well, thankfully, the daughter had not done anything, and she had not initiated any probate actions or anything like that. Thank goodness. I told her that all they needed to do was some simple legal paperwork. It's a simple document, an affidavit. It's going to require a notary. It's not going to be hard. It will require a little extra maneuvering with the investment company to pay out the beneficiaries, but the money will flow through mom's estate to the beneficiaries. It's going to be all fine. Catastrophe avoided, right? Major pain in the A. By the way, a probate process in California is now at least 12 months, 8, 9, 10, 12 months. No, it's ridiculous how long it takes. And it costs a blinking fortune for something that wasn't necessary in the first place. So, catastrophe avoided. So with that, I want to leave you with some IRA retirement account tips. Make sure on your IRA 401k, make sure that you have your beneficiaries named. Individual real people, okay? Individual real people named as your beneficiaries. Do not name your trust. Don't name your trust or your estate or anything like that if you can avoid it. Unless you've checked with your tax preparer and your attorney who said, in your specific situation, you should put your trust as the beneficiary, don't do it. Now, remember what I just said there. Unless you've spoken with your tax preparer and your trust attorney, and they've assured you that it's okay to have your trust as the beneficiary, you might still want to get a double check on that, okay? Very important. So remember on your IRA to include contingent beneficiaries. So on my IRA, my wife is named as primary beneficiary. My daughter is named as secondary beneficiary. She's a backup, okay? These are so important. There are tax laws and rules associated with IRAs, retirement accounts, that are very favorable to beneficiaries, but it only works if you name them. You've got to name them as beneficiaries. So make sure that you don't have an ex-wife or an ex-husband or a spouse or a mother or father who have passed away listed as your beneficiary. Got to get those beneficiary things changed, get them updated. It's not hard to do. If you have any questions about this whatsoever, email me, Kraig at kraigstrom.com. Kraig with a K at kraigstrom.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me all over the web. Just ask the questions. Don't just wing it, okay? Now, final thing. I'm going to roll through this quick, but I cannot ignore this. This is a listener question. This is segment 2, listener question. And it seems to be more and more and more that I'm getting these. And it's because it is advertised out there so actively. It's another question about indexed universal life. Now, I know there's a reason for this. Remember, I said there's no product that is universally wrong, pun intended, universal life. But I personally still have not figured out where an indexed universal life fits for anybody that I've ever met. I know it must be. I'm open to learning, but I still haven't figured it out. So here's what this listener wrote in with. This listener said, I originally purchased this policy to be just a part of my overall financial and retirement plan. Okay. I have significant assets already in my pre-tax retirement accounts, Roth, brokerage, and savings accounts. I am married. I will have a defined benefit pension plan. Now, that's unique. A defined benefit pension plan, having a pension, maybe 7% of workers in America have one of those nowadays. So that's a big deal. Along with our Social Security payments in addition to that. Now, I'm trying to maximize my peak earnings and savings years to finish the accumulation phase of my financial plan. I agree with you that maximizing retirement income is best done with an optimized combination of various products and vehicles. Awesome. Big thumbs up. My thumbs are in the air. I realize that there are commissions and costs with this policy, but wasn't sure if they are considered high or excessive. Okay, the main goal I was trying to achieve was avoiding negative returns and getting tax-free distributions income on part of my portfolio. Also, providing some additional permanent life insurance was attractive. So they ask, what do you think? So here's what I think. This person sent me a copy of their indexed universal life original policy illustration. Now, what that is when these policies are sold, they come with an illustration, much like a whole life insurance policy. A universal life insurance policy will have a separate illustration so that it'll show you what their projections are based on the variables that have been included in the policy. It's a forward-looking projection, and this person sent me a 3-year current statement that shows here's what your cash accumulation value is. Here's where you stand 3 years in. And they sent an illustration that was originally used when this policy was placed. So 3 years ago, this illustration was used to say, here's what your policy could look like. Okay. Now, the illustration included a 7% projected growth rate. Alarm bells are going off right now. As soon as I see a 7% growth rate, your alarm bells should be going off as well. Because 7% means they're projecting a 7% linear rate of return. Now, we know that everything ebbs and flows and ups and downs. For those of you who do not know what an indexed universal life insurance policy is, just a quick little tidbit here. The interest rate credited to the cash accumulation value is derived from referencing a stock market index. So let's say the Standard & Poor's 500. So the stock market goes up. The interest credit on the life insurance goes up. If the stock market goes up again, the interest credit goes up. If the stock market reference point, the money from these policies is never in the stock market, but if the stock market reference point goes down, the policy is credited with a 0% interest. So there's no downside from the market reference. There is, however, downside in the policy. So let me jump to the first thing that really, the big thing that caught my eye. Okay. Remember what I said. This is a 3-year in. We're in 3 years now. And what I had to look at was a policy statement that shows the cash accumulation value today. And I have an illustration that was used 3 years ago to show what was projected 3 years into the policy. So what was projected 3 years in? Well, cash value projection was $68,642. $68,642 using a 7% linear crediting rate. Okay? So when we look at that, what happened? What was the actual cash value today, 3 years in? $47,600. Remember, what was it projected? $68,642. We're $21,000 off. We're only 3 years in, and we're $21,000 off. That is huge. That's something to really pay attention to. Now, for the record, I ran an internal rate of return analysis on the original illustration. Remember, the original illustration was merely a projection pointing into the future that says if we use a 7% crediting rate every single year for 20 years, this is what the policy could look like. What's the actual internal rate of return 20 years from now using the original illustration? It was only 4.73%. What happened to the 7%? What happened to the 2.27% difference? I'm sorry to get wonky sometimes on these numbers because you're jogging, you're driving, you're listening to this podcast, and you're going, what numbers did he just say? Well, what you have to just hear, 7% projected crediting rate, the actual internal rate of return was 4.73. It was not even, it was even close to 7, substantially off, 2.27%. What happened? Where's the 2.27% gone? Well, that's fees. That's fees right there, folks. That's the only thing you can think. I mean, there's the internal expenses and fees in this policy, 2.27%. Okay? And you've got to pay close attention. We were projected 68,000. The policy's only hit 47. It's already only 3 years into the policy. We're $21,000 in the hole compared to what we had originally looked at. Okay? So what you've got to do, if you have an indexed universal life or a universal life policy, these policies have flexibility in them that's variable. That means that it could look very, very different than what you originally saw. You've got to request, now listen to the language, if you have an indexed universal life or a universal life policy, you've got to request a policy reprojection, also called an updated forward-looking illustration. In the business, we call them a reprojection. And request an illustrated rate of 6% or maybe 5.5%. Don't illustrate reprojected in the future at 7 again, because clearly 7 wasn't right. 6 is probably not right. But you've got to know what this policy looks like projected from today going forward. Okay? Now, a quick note. I didn't dig in. I'm not going to, I can't ignore it though. These policies, universal life and indexed universal life especially, they can have some very severe surrender penalties. These are charges and penalties charged if you were to cash out and cancel. You've got a $47,000 value, which is $21,000 less than it was targeted in the beginning. But here's the rough part. If this person surrenders this policy, the value is only $19,000. The surrender penalties are huge on these policies. Surrender penalties are somewhere in the neighborhood of $18,000 on this policy. Okay? It doesn't mean that in certain situations, I haven't been in a position where I've had to teach people this and encourage them to cut their losses. That in the long run, the idea of a permanent cash value policy is a very good idea for most people in many situations. It's the right kind of policy that is so important. Okay? There are policies that would be, I guess what I could say is that we would be having an extremely different conversation if this was a permanent whole life insurance policy that had been designed, note the word, designed for very high cash value, high liquidity, and low compensation for the advisor. It's really important that you hear that you can take a whole life insurance policy and design it with very high cash value, rapid accumulation, by minimizing the part of the policy that pays the commission the highest to the advisor. Okay, there's not a lot of advisors who truly understand how to design these kinds of policies. So if you want to know more about that, if you're in one of these policies, I'll put it out again. I am happy to give you an analysis. I'll just give you the numbers. I'll teach you this stuff. I can never promise that it won't be a depressing conversation, because sometimes it is a disappointing or depressing conversation when I have to come in and educate people on where they are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years into something like this, okay? But don't let that stop you. Please go to Personal Pension Radio, go to my LinkedIn page, email me, call me, get in touch. I'm here to help. Now, that's where I'll finish today. The future belongs to those who take action. We do have a retirement income crisis in America. So to you, the listener, asking these kinds of questions, I commend you. Now it's time to get off the log and take action. I very much look forward to talking to you again in the next episode. Thanks for being here. Share this out with all of your friends. Please keep those questions coming. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you're there, we would appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening. Now for the disclosure. Information presented is for educational purposes only and is not intended for solicitation, sale or purchase of any security or financial product. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and your tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed here. The term personal pension refers to a marketing name designed to educate future retirees and retirees about the economic principles behind creating their own pension-like income. The term personal pension is not intended to be confused with a defined benefit pension plan offered by an employer or by a government entity.